Okay, so let me just write a small program. Maybe using that you will understand this. Then I'll come to the presentation. Okay, so let me share my entire screen. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so let me just write a program. So basically, we're going to look at something called as this pointer. Okay, so as always, we start with the hash include IOStream using namespace std. I have a main function in the main which has a return 0. Okay. Now let me declare a class. Okay, so the class name is class test. Okay, and let me have a private variable. Let's say int x. Okay, and let me have a public function void set x, and inside it let me have an argument with the same name as that of my private variable, that is x. Okay, and inside this what I'm going to do is like I'm going to say cout, or let me ask you this. Let's say I want to assign this x, the private variable x, the value which is stored in this one. So basically, I'm going to create an object called as obj, and obj dot, I'll say set x of 10. Okay. So using this x value, so basically when I call this function using the object, the 10 value will be passed to this x value. And inside this function, I want to set the value of this x, okay, the x of the private variable. So if I do like this, x equal to x, does it mean anything? Like, so which x is assigned to which x? So does this, the value 10 is assigned to this x by this, or is it something else, or is it assigning anything? Okay, so there is an ambiguity here. If you have the same type of or same name for private variables and arguments, or if I can also have a public variable of the name x. Okay, so the question is, in this situation, how will you distinguish between the private variable x and the input argument x? So how will you distinguish between these two? Now, to distinguish between this, we'll use the this pointer. So if I say this hyphen or the arrow x, this means that we are referring to the private variable of the current object. So my object is obj, and this is when I am saying this arrow x, I am referring to the private variable of obj x, that is the line number 7. And if I do is equal to x, then basically I will assign the value of the input argument x, which is in the right hand side, to the private variable x, which is mentioned in the left hand side. So here we are actually assigning the value of the input argument to the private variable using the this pointer. If we didn't have this pointer, then there is always an ambiguity on which variable we have used. Okay, so if I have another function void show, and if I print out cout, the value of x is x, and So if I do this, and if I call that function obj dot show, and if I run this, let's say I run this. So you see the value of x is 10. So basically, I have passed the value 10 to this argument x, and I have assigned that value to the private variable of the class or of the object x using this pointer. If we haven't put this pointer here, then there is no meaning to the statement that x equal to x. So I can write the command as this arrow x refers to the variable, or I would say, yeah, variable of the current object. Okay, and this x is the x mentioned in the argument is actually an argument. It's not a variable of that object. Okay, so this is one advantage of using this pointer. I hope you have understood. So basically, whenever there's an ambiguity on the variable names, then you can always use this pointer to refer to this current object. Okay, so let me come back to the presentation. Okay, so this pointer points to the current object of the class. So in our previous example, we have seen that the current object is obj. So this point is actually pointing to that object. We have already seen in the last class what a pointer to an object is. So this is a predefined pointer already defined by the compiler, which points to the object. So when an object is created, there's a this pointer created which points to this object. Okay, this unique point is automatically passed to a member function when it is called. Okay, so when I am creating a member function like this pointer is already passed to the member function. We don't want to explicitly define that it is being passed. We just want to define what our arguments are, that's all. And internally it is passing this pointer. Okay, the pointer as an implicit argument to our member function. So there is an argument for this pointer which we don't want to define. Now, what are the uses of this pointer? I think this was asked in a couple of times in semester exams. So first point is this pointer is used when the local variable name is same as the member variable name. So in our example, you see int x, which is mentioned as an argument of our function, is a local variable name. And this is a member variable name. So if the member variable name and the local variable name, for example, I can have something like this. Instead of this argument, I can have inside the function, I can have index like this. Now, even if this is called as a local variable, which is something inside some function. Okay, if a local variable is there having a name which is same as that of the member variable, then we can use this pointer to access the member variable. You cannot access a local variable using this pointer. You can access only a member variable using this pointer. Next case. In this case, to access correctly the member variable, we use this pointer. That is what I have told. So one example is this. This we have written and we have looked at it. So basically there's a class called as test, which has a private member variable x. There's a function, member function, public member function called as setX. And in this one, you have a local variable called as index. So if I want to assign the member variable x, the value of the local variable x, then you use this pointer with an arrow mark to indicate that you are assigning to the member variable x the value in the local variable. Okay, this we have already seen. There is another what you call use of this pointer is to return an object or return the current object, to return the reference to the calling object. Okay, so if I say test, so I am returning an object of test. So in this case, I can just say return star this, means that you are actually returning a pointer to the object obj. Okay, so this means that you're actually returning a pointer to the object obj. So you're returning the same object or a reference to the object. So for example, return star this statement inside a member function will return the object that invoked the function. Okay, what do you mean by that? So you see obj.setX is the call to the function, and the object which invoked setX is obj. So actually you are returning back the same object. Okay, when a reference to a local object is returned, the returned reference can be used to chain function calls on a single object. So we'll see that how. This is a sample problem. Okay, what do you mean by chaining of function calls? I can call multiple functions at a time. So let me write the program so that you will understand that. Let me have the same. Okay, so the class is test. I have, let's say I have two variables, index and int y. Okay, now let's say I have um, set x in which I am setting the value of x, which means this hyphen x is equal to x. Okay, and I have another function which is called as set y, in which I am setting the value of y using this. So I can say int, let's say y here, int x here, this hyphen this arrow y is equal to y. And I'm returning, or let me don't return this one so that we'll see how that is happening. So let's say I'm returning void. So if I want to set the value of x and y, how will you do? I'll first call obj dot set x of, let's say 10. Then I will call, then I want to set the value of y. So this is where I am going to set the value of x. Now I want to set the value of y. So what I will do, obj dot set y of 20. So I set the value of 20. So if I do this, then the value of x and y are set, right? So here I am calling using two separate instructions. One, first I call x, set the value. Next I call y, set the value. Okay. Instead, I can use, you can have a single instruction to set both x and y. We won't change anything inside the function. What we'll change is, we say we are going to return a object of test in both the cases. Okay. And then, or I will say a reference to the test. Then I say I'll return this. Here also I'll return this. Okay. And inside this, what I will do is I will chain them. I'll put a dot again. Then I say set y of 20. This is called as chaining of functions. So how it works is that, let's run and see. Okay, so let me put a breakpoint here. Let me put in debug mode. Okay, so if you go into the function, first the setX function is called. That is, this function is called because obj.setX is there. SetX will set the value of x. It will return back. Okay. I think debugger has a problem. Okay, let me just run this. Let me see obj.show. You see, actually, the value of x and y is set. although we are calling it only using a single line of instruction. So what is happening is like this. First, obj.setX is called. So it will go to the setX function. It will set the value of x. It is returning at this point. So the return, this will be come here. So basically this will be actually the value of object itself, obj itself. So after calling this function, it will call the function set y of the same object. Basically this is equivalent to saying obj dot set x of 10 and then obj dot set y of 20. Okay, so this single statement is equivalent to saying these two instructions. Why? Because you are returning at this pointer, which is pointing to the object obj for each of these functions. Okay, so this is called as chaining of functions. I hope you understood this. Okay, for this pointer is bit of what do you call unconventional type of pointer, so it might be a bit difficult for you to understand. Plus, so please read through this once again. Okay, so that is regarding this pointer. Next, we are going into the last topic of module number 3, which is called as polymorphism. Okay, so polymorphism, as the name indicates, means that it is can have multiple forms. For example, the water can exist in 3 different forms: liquid, gas, and solid. Okay, the characteristics remains the same, but the form in which it is seen is different. Or we can say the characteristics is also changing in some way, and visually also it is having a different structure. This is called as a polymorphism. Okay, for in living beings, you can see butterfly has something called as a polymorphic what do you call lifetime. Okay, it will be having a pupa and then a butterfly. Similarly, a frog has a tadpole and a frog. So they have different characteristics in different stages of their life. So that is called as a polymorphism. In C++ also, you have something called as a polymorphism. Okay, so we define polymorphism as the ability of a message to be displayed in more than one form. Okay, so real life polymorphism, a person at the same time can have different characteristics, like a man at the same time, he is a father, husband, and employee. So okay, so something like that. There are 2 types of polymorphism. One is called as compile time, other is called as runtime. Compile time means something, a polymorphism which is happening while you do the compilation. There are 2 types of polymorphism. 2 types. One is called as method overriding, another is called as operator overloading. We have seen already operator overloading. There's something called as a runtime polymorphism, which is virtual functions. Okay, we have seen pure virtual functions. Similarly, there is something called as a virtual functions. Now, it's not pure; it is a virtual function. Okay, so virtual function is also it's a runtime polymorphism. So polymorphism means when you run the code will exhibit some kind of a change in characteristic. That is called as a runtime polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism means when you compile the code, the program will exhibit a change in characteristics. Okay. Sorry, I think I just went to the last. Okay. Now, compile time polymorphism, there are 2 types. This polymorphism is exhibited using either during we are doing an operator overloading. So operator overloading, when you say operator overloading, you see when you have a plus operator, it can exhibit 2 characteristics. One is when you have 2 plus 3, it is actually adding 2 and 3. And then if you give an operator overloading code, then if you add 2 objects, obj1 plus obj2, basically you are adding each of the private variables inside the object. So the same plus operator exhibits 2 different characteristics. One is a symbol addition, symbol operation, symbol plus operation. Another is something that you have defined. So basically it has 2 different characteristics, which means it's a polymorphic behavior. Similarly, a function can have a polymorphic behavior. Let me show you that. Okay, let me just let's create only this function. test class test. Okay. Now let me define a function which says void let's say add. Okay, then I say int x comma int y. Okay, then I say cout some value is, then I say x plus y. So the addition has my output here. Okay, this is one function. Now I am going to define another function void. Here I am going to add three different variables, but I am going to give the same name, int x comma int y comma int z. Okay, cout some value of three variables is x plus y plus z. Here the sum value of two variables is x plus y. Okay, so if you see this, you see that you have given the same function name. Okay, now the question is, will this give you any compilation error? That's my question. Okay, so if I do this obj dot, so let me first initialize these values. So let me create a constructor, or I don't want to do that. So obj dot add of 10 comma 20. The question is, will this cause a compilation error? Because you have the same function name. So won't the compiler be confused when you call that function, which function to be called? Okay, because both the functions have the same name. If I compile this, okay, it is taking some time, but if you do the compilation, you see that the compilation will be successful. Okay, you see that there are 0 errors. Why? Although the function names are same, the number of input arguments are different. So when you call that function with the input arguments, depending on the number of input arguments, the corresponding function is called. So here, if you see, you are calling with two input arguments, 10 and 20. So the compiler, when it runs, this program checks which is the function with two input arguments, that is in the line number 11. So this function will be called. Okay, so let me put one more statement, obj dot add of 1 comma 2 comma 3. You see that the function name is same, but your number of input arguments is different. So if I let's put a breakpoint. If I compile and if I do the debugging, we'll see how that function call is being executed. So there are three ways to, so this is called as function overloading or function overloading. So basically you have created for the same function, but different for the same function name, you have two different meanings to the function. One is where it is you are adding two variables, another is where you are adding three variables. So if I put in debug mode, so in the first function call, it has called the line number 11 function. Okay, it has executed that. Come back. Okay. Now, if I go to the, I think there is some problem with my debugging. Let me just put it once again. Okay, so I go into the function. So in the next case, it will go into the second function because you are giving three different arguments. Okay. And it is going into that function. So depending on the number of arguments, you can create different functions with the same name. There's one more point. You can, let me stop the execution. Okay. You can have the same number of input arguments, but with a different return type. So int add int x comma int y. If you do this, and you should return the value, see out, or I would say int z, z is equal to x plus y, and you return z. Okay, so if you do int, let me declare a new variable here, int a, and I say a is equal to obj dot add of 10 comma 20. You see here, although these three functions have the same name, the first two functions have the number of arguments different. The first and the third function have same number of input arguments, but with a different return type. So the compiler is intelligent enough to understand that depending on the function called with number of input arguments, the corresponding function will be called. And even if you have the same number of input arguments, if you are having a return type, then that function will be called. Okay, this is called as function overloading. Okay, so function overloading means when there are multiple functions with the same name but different parameters, then these functions are said to be overloaded. So it can be change in the number of arguments, change in type of arguments. For example, I can have something like this, void, this can be float. Okay, so if I do something like this 20.1, then also the compiler knows that when I call this function, when I call this, there's a floating point argument in one of the arguments because of which it will call this function. Okay, it will not call this function. So depending on the number of arguments and depending on the type of arguments, you can overload the functions. Okay, let me try to see if the debugging is working. Compile. Okay, return is not needed. Okay, so let me see if this can be done. Okay, so I think debugging has some problem. So let me just run the code. So you see that when the first function is called add 10 comma 20, sum of two variables is 30, which is this line number 11 function. When the second function is called line number 28, when you add 1 2 comma 3, then it has called the 14th line number function with the same function name but with three different arguments. When I call 10 comma 20.1, where one of the input arguments is double or float, then it has called the corresponding functions line number 17, which gives me 30. So the function can be overloaded either by input number of input arguments or change in type of input arguments or the return type. Okay, this is called as function overloading. And function overloading is some kind of a compile time polymorphism. The next type of overloading called as operator overloading, which we have already seen in module number 2, is another example of compile time polymorphism. Next, we have something called as runtime polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism means the program comes to know about this different types of what you call characteristics only while it is running the program. In this case, when you compile the program itself, the program knows that there are three different functions with the same name, but with different types of arguments and different number of arguments. This is known during the compilation. But you can also have a change in the characteristic of the program while it is being run. This is called as runtime polymorphism. And function overriding is one of the important characteristics of runtime polymorphism. So we'll see one example. So this is that example. So in this example, if you see, there's a base class, there's a derived class from the base. The base class has a virtual function. You see, this is not a pure virtual function because it is not equal to 0. You have defined a function as virtual, and there is a function definition also. And the same function is declared also in the derived class. Okay, this much is there. Okay. Now, in the main function, you are creating a pointer of the base class. Okay, the base class pointer is being created here and a object of the derived class. And then you're assigning the base class pointer with the address of object class pointer. Basically, you are pointing the BPTR to D. Now, when I call, so this is the base class pointer. So when I call BPTR arrow print, it should have called actually the print function of the base class because your print function is there in the base class and in the derived class. But instead, since the print function is virtual, it will not call the print function of base class, but it will call the print function of the derived class. So this happens only when it is being run. It will not happen while compilation. And it will not happen, the compiler will not know that this is there in the program. So when the program runs, only this happens. So you see that the same print function has two different forms, both in base class and the derived class. And using the base class pointer, you are accessing the derived class function. Similarly, if you look at show function, it is not a virtual function. It is a normal function. So if I call bptr-show, it is going to call the function of the base class, not of the derived class. Only because print function is virtual in the base class, accessing the using the base class pointer, calling the print function will call the derived class print function, which is this one. Okay, so just for your convenience, I'll try to write the code and we'll see how that works. Okay, so I have a class called as base. Okay, and I have a public virtual function called as print, in which I'm going to say just see out, this is base class print. Okay, and I have another function which is not virtual. So this is a virtual function, and this is not a pure virtual function. That you should understand. In pure virtual function, you will have the virtual void print equal to 0. Here you are defining something inside the function. So you say void show in bracket cout, this is base class show. Okay, now I'm going to create a new class called as derived, which derives publicly from base, and I'll have the same functions, except that this will not be virtual. Okay, And inside the main function, I'm going to create a base pointer, base star bptr, and a derived class object d, and I am assigning the base pointer with the address of the derived class, and I am going to call bptr hyphen arrow print, and I'm also going to call bptr arrow show. Okay, so let's compile this. Now let me just put a breakpoint here and debug. So if I go into this function, it is going into the derived class print function, not in the base class print function. Okay, and it will just come out of that. So it will not execute the derived class print function. Similarly, if I use the show function, if I go into the function, it is going into the base class show function, because the base class show function is not a virtual function in the base class, while the print is a virtual function in the base class. So depending on whether you make a function as virtual in the base class, you can access either the derived class or base class function. Okay, this is called as runtime polymorphism, or called as a function overriding. Other is function overloading. This is called as function overriding. You are overriding, instead of calling a function, a particular function, you are calling a different function with the same name. Okay, this is called as function overriding. Okay, okay. So this is regarding function override. So this is what is there in the slides. Okay, so I think we'll stop it here, and the last topic is virtual constructors and destructors. I think it might not take more than 10 minutes, but still we'll do it in the next class. Okay, so I hope you're understanding what I am teaching. I am not getting any response from you, because of which I'm not sure how much you understand what I teach. At least whatever programs that I am doing live during the sessions is pretty much okay for you. I hope you are understanding that. I'm doing it on the live session because one thing is, if you want to try out by yourself, you can do that. You can, if you want to write it down, you can do that, and it will also give you some time to think on what I'm doing. Okay, so if you have any comments or any questions, please let me know. If you want me to explain it anything else, because we are almost at the end of module 3. We'll have one like 10 more minutes to finish the module, and then we will start with Java. So Java is almost similar to C++. If you understand C++, Java is pretty much easy, except that there are some other extra features in Java which I think is not very tough to understand. Okay, any questions? I also would like to get a feedback from you, so maybe I'll post a feedback form, maybe in the next class or something. Let me check. Okay. Okay, so